requiring you to do, and what is the commission requiring you to do. Sorry? And have what? I don't know. No, it should be part of the KPIs because it's not behavior, it's performance. It's how you're going to spend your time. The other thing is that you have to look at the value that it's bringing to the organization. Because if it brings no value to the organization, not helping the support, etc., there's a real question as to why you're doing it now. In this case, the government is a stakeholder. It is part of the engagement with stakeholders. So it is there. So it should be one of your KPIs. The question is, what is it? What is that KPI? You have to be in control of it. It has to be more. It has to be at least 15% of the value, and it has to take. It has to be one of your 5, or one of your 7 if you're an executive. Well, I'm saying, don't allow them to put a 6-1 name. Don't do that. Don't go there. Don't allow it to happen. It might. It's very possible they turn around, no, we have to put a 6-1. But every single time you add into it, you're just adding up stuff that's not possible to achieve. And also, what is the value of your participation? How can you help expand? That would be great. It's just sitting there, doing nothing. It's hard to justify how that is helping expand. Besides just, there's a word that's expand when I'm sitting here. Sign the sheet and leave. I didn't say that. No, turn off the camera. No, because I mean, you're all busy doing stuff, but it's important is that you relate your KPI to what is happening in the organization. What's happening here? What's happening here? That will allow you to move from your 87% to at least 100 to 120. That's the road. That's the direction. Okay? I know it's a big step forward, and you haven't done it yet. So it's like, believe me. So there's this leap of faith. But you do understand that documentation is key. Do not allow the system to fall apart by not having the boss there, by not allowing to write things down, by not having to sign off. That is your right. You must insist on it. Otherwise, you'll become your own victim. You become the victim, right? But you've done the victimization to yourself. You have to be in your hands will allow you to do the job. Yeah. Good. No one's crying. That's good. No one's left the room really. That's good. So we're okay. The next piece then is really. We can do be smart. You wants to do the KPI, be smart. Okay, I'm the boss. Can I do it? Thanks, boss. So we're up to page 62. So setting KPIs. We've been talking about this all morning long. So there's a famous SMART. SMART stands for, if you write a KPI that's specific, that's measurable, that's actionable, that's realistic, and that's timed, you're okay. And our point to that is that actually, that's nice, but it's not enough because you already have SMART KPIs and it's not allowing you to achieve your objectives. What we need on top of that is that we need to see the link between your KPI and the strategy. Beneficial. It is the measurement that you're giving your KPI effective. Is it something under your control? Is it something that is worthwhile? Are you making sure that your KPI, the people that you depend upon, have been told what the KPI is? That's important. And that is relevant. The famous up here, relevant. So basically, what we want to look at is we want to look at the things that are measurable impact on the business. It adds value to the organization, that it's effective, that is feasible within the year, that it takes into account that your information and your processing has somebody who gives you information. Does that person know what your KPI is? It's important to tell them. I have to answer this report in 3 days. I have to give a report in 3 days. I depend on your information for that. You need to have it in your KPIs if that's the case, because I depend on it. Have that honest conversation. That's the engaged. Know where your information is coming from, and where your work is coming from, and where it's going. Think about that. Where are you in the process? Who's upstream, who's downstream? It depends on you. Who are you dependent on? Understand that. Think about that. That's very, very important. For example, here's a KPI, create 12 reports per quarter. That's specific. One report. That's measurable, that's 12. That's actionable, yeah, I can do that. Is it realistic? I think I can do that. Right? Is it time bound? Yeah, with every quarter. So it fits the SMART, but it's a lousy KPI. That KPI is lousy. Why? Because it has nothing to do, just creating reports. For what? What purpose is that serving? Where is that report going? Are the people receiving that report, are they happy with it? Are they using it? So how about if we rewrite this audit to create 12 audit reports on a quarter that generate a satisfaction index of 95%, that the people who receive it actually use it and are happy with it. Now it means something. But to generate a report for generating reports, most governments are like that, yeah. That stack of paper. It's not. And then, the second one within this, address and resolve any issue with an audit report within 2 working days. If there's anything that's wrong, you're going to take it up and take care of it. Now your audit report has meaning. It's not a number, it's actually a quality. It's a quality. So this is a good one, because it's beneficial, it's effective, it's engaged, right? It's talking to your customers, and it's relevant. We're moving forward. Does that make sense? So what you write down here is not just a number and, I'm going to try my best. It's actually, what is this doing? What's the value that you bring to the organization? That's a much better view. Let's look at this one. Improve technical audits by 5% versus last year. Is that a good example or a bad example? Number one, improve technical audits by 5%. So it's okay to you? Well, how about this? What does improve mean? What are we measuring on the technical report? What's of value in the technical report? So therefore, just taking the word improve, you need to talk about what is this 5% measuring? You need to have some value to it. Just giving a number and saying that would be nice to do, it's far too vague. Far too vague. And I can guarantee you, if you think that you know what this means, your boss thinks something else. Right? Yeah. He's thinking, or she's thinking something completely different than what you're thinking. Because when you improve 5%, yeah, I know what that means for myself. So in that discussion with your boss, you need to basically understand what this means, what that means, what's the base, what's the customer looking for, who's the customer, what are we looking at here, why are we looking at this, why is this important, how does that relate to the plan? Not not that you just want to give him a headache. You're not saying, oh, no, please. But basically, these are the things you need to go to. You need to have KPIs that mean something to you. So increase the number of case filings by 3%. That's very similar to this one. It's poor because basically, you know, why are you filing these cases? You can file anything, right? It doesn't mean anything. Where's that, right? Or here, recruit 3 new staff members. For what? It's okay, I won't gossip. What's the reason behind it? Why do we need 3 people? And what are the functions that are going to be fulfilled here? So you see how this KPI can get really important. Dive into the detail. And by when? What's their background? This famous inspect new products. I guess you do have that, right? You have to inspect new products as they come out. I spent, how many hours do we spend with them on that one? It's like, how is this done? Why do you do it this way? How could you do it better? Why 20 products? Where did they come from? How? What? It's like, this is like, yeah. Who? And how important are these new products? IoT is coming, right? The Internet of Things has 20 billion hookups now. That's just going to increase exponentially. So don't you think that this number is going to be going, right? And then, you know, what products are they? Are they IoT products? Are they not? Increase processing time by 12% year on year. Why? Is this an important process? You eliminate this process? Why is processing time important? See what I mean? You start questioning life now. Why am I doing this job? No. It actually, there is a reason behind this. And you may understand that reason, but be sure that your boss agrees with that reason, and that you share that reason. Because I can't tell you the amount of times at the end of the year, boss turns around and says, you improved only 10%, and you said, no, I've done 20%. And you have two different understandings of what percentage you're using, what basis you're based on, etc. And you don't want to know about that. You don't want to learn about that during your job performance review at the end of the year. That gets ugly. That gets ugly very fast. So at the beginning of the year, as you get into it, improve the employee engagement index by department by 3% compared to last year. Okay. How are we going to do that, right? Why this target? Why only this target? Is it 3%, 5%? What are we going to do to change it? Is that a realistic number? Is that enough? Is that enough? Improve staff morale is even worse. Have parties every Friday. You know, what are you going to do? This is right. So these are all examples of, yeah, they look good. You get a KPI, but then what do you do with it? It's like buying a car that doesn't work. And you have a car that doesn't work. So, if anything, all of these are examples of we can do better. And the way you do better is to look at, well, where are you in the process? Who's behind me? Who's delivering me information? How am I using that information? How am I moving that forward? What am I in charge of? What am I responsible for? What am I in control of? How does that fit into our strategy? All these things play. Yeah? Okay. Any other questions or comments? It's not easy the first couple of times, huh? You cannot expect to have perfect KPIs the first time around. But we got somebody with a lot of experience in the room. 2 o'clock? I think you guys deserve extra half hour. And please come back. The afternoon is different than the morning. Almost all here. Let's start. So basically, as we talked about this morning, really it's a conversation you need to have with your boss in terms of KPIs and also in terms of behaviors. These conversations sometimes are comfortable, but they shouldn't be always comfortable. You don't move forward unless there's disagreement. And so therefore, what we're going to do this afternoon is spend time working through what does that mean and how can you come to a better conclusion. How can you handle controversy and confrontation. And the way we do this, we find the best when we do training, is to really do what's called a role play. So we're going to do 3 role plays this afternoon. Each role play involves 3 people. The first person is the boss, the second person is the employee or subordinate, and the third person is the observer. So you're basically going to play the role of the boss once, the role of the employee once, and the role of the observer once. You do 1 round, okay? So you're going to change roles every time, but it's a different role play each time. So you don't get to repeat. Okay? The idea is that you give it all in one element. But what happens is the first 3 pages are preparation pages. So you use 1 per script, depending if you are the boss, if you are the employee, or if you are the observer at one time. So you use all 3. The other element is that both the boss and the employee are going to be, having the same story. They have the same issue, but obviously the employee sees it one way, the boss sees this another. Otherwise, why do a role play? So there is a conflict, but we don't know what the conflict is. So what we ask you to do is that if you are, for example, the manager, just read the manager's script. We have it both in English and in Bahasa. And if you are the employee, you just read the employee script. Don't look at the boss script. Remember, honesty is the #1, right? This is a test. Okay? And the observer basically sees both, because the observer must understand both sides of the story so they can make comments. That's the first thing. So, the way we prepare this is that if you are, for example, the supervisor, you take out the front sheet. Right? If we're doing Anwar, the first one. If you are the employee, if you're Anwar, then you take up the employee sheet. And if you're the observer, then you just take the observer sheet. And then you change each and every time. Okay. So what is it? What are they? Basically, the front sheet, for the supervisor and for the employee. What we want you to do is we want you to prepare for the meeting. And these sheets are actually the same thing that you can use in your own job. When you're back at work and you're getting prepared for an important meeting, you can use these sheets. We're glad to give you soft copies. And the idea behind it is that for a meeting such as the job performance review, you want to be prepared. You want to be prepared, you want to have your key arguments laid out. You do not want to go into the meeting unprepared, right? Not having thought through the major arguments that you want to defend. So these meeting sheets are basically going to help you get ready, okay? So what you do is, if you're the boss, you read the boss script. So scenario A, boss script. You have it both in English, and then the next page is in Bahasa. And then you fill in a sheet that says supervisor. If you are the employee, you do exactly the reverse. You fill in the employee sheet and you only read scenario A, the employee. I'm gonna try to read this in Bahasa. Yeah. And then the observer, all you do is you just, for the moment, all you do is you just read both scripts that are given to you. Once you're ready, once the employee and the boss are ready to talk, you start talking. There's no magical time, you start talking. And the observer observes. And the way the observer observes is they basically fill in their sheet. And what we're asking you to do is to fill in the keys, the increase, the stop, the start. The behaviors that you observe the employee and the boss doing. Right? And how did they address the issue? For this first one, for Anwar, there's not a lot of preparation or things that you can do because you haven't seen the rest. But as we get through the afternoon, we expect you to improve on how you handle the situation, particularly the boss. Okay? A couple of more observations. Yeah, so you discuss, and I want you, or the objective is that you need to come to an understanding. You need to come to a provisional rating of Anwar. So obviously Anwar's going to have an idea of his rating. Boss is going to have another idea about what the potential rating for Anwar is, and the two of you, as you discuss, have to come to an agreement of what that rating should be. And we'll discuss that once you're done. So once you have your rating in agreement, then you just stop, and the observer debriefs, says what he or she has observed. I think that's the way it works. There is no start time, no stop time. But we will stop it after about 15 minutes. There's some people that can go on for hours. There's no reason to. This is fairly straightforward, right? A couple of more things. One of them is that we take particular attention that no one's name is Anwar. Anwar doesn't exist. The elements are that there are no rights or wrongs, and you try to stay in character. Even if you don't think Anwar is right, and you're playing Anwar, just play Anwar. Don't bring your own. Same with the boss. Right? Don't change the script. Okay? Don't get really confused. So, as I said earlier, where is this? What I said earlier is that these resemble what happens to you, but it's not 100% taken from reality. All right? So don't try to figure out who Anwar is. There's many different people. There's many different conditions. Okay? So I guess because you're laid up 3 by 3, that's fine. Okay? Ready? Observers, right? So only the observers. We don't do the bosses or the subordinate. Anyone give a 1? No? No one? How about a 2? Anyone a 2? Yeah. Here, 1, 2. 2 2s. 3 2s. 4 2s. 4 2s. That's it? 4 2s. Okay. How about a 3? Does anyone give a 3? 1. Anyone else? 2? Anyone else? No? Okay, so 4? How many? How many in 4? There are 11 groups, so we only have 6. How many other 5? So remember, it's a rating of 1, 2, 3, or 4. Yeah?
Is that one of the behavior, observed behavior, or
No, this is just in general. But actually, in the text, it says the behavior, right? Yeah. The behavior is discipline. What is it? Honesty and discipline. Yeah. Yeah, so it's around those, yeah? Did you give a rating? Did you give a rating? You didn't discuss. Okay, basically what we want to do is that each time we have a role play, we want to go through what did the boss and Anwar agree to, what rating. It's okay, it's the first time we're doing it, the next 2 times you're going to get better. But let's go back. Let's go back to these two. Those that said 3. You're a 3, right? Why a 3? Why a 3?
We tend to consensus that the attendance is not a factor of KPI.
That was a good argument. Who is Anwar? Which one of you? Anwar had a good argument, yeah. It has nothing to do with me, boss. Right? But what was your argument as a boss? What was your argument as a boss?
Yeah, but
Listen up, yeah. Go ahead.
although I'm worried that the other workers may look the negative side on it.
Yeah.
Although he had performed, but the others may think will affect their.
Will affect them, yeah?
Yes.
So, but you agreed with her that she's being productive still, so it's okay.
Still productive, but coming
Okay. Yeah. All right. How about the other 3? There's another 3 somewhere. No. Yeah. Why 3? Sorry?
We give some solution that he may not be able to come early, but he may come back late.
Right.
In that case, we say that the quality is remained,
Right.
even though he comes late. So in this case, the supervisor does not compromise on the quality, but he compromise on the comes late.
Right. On the perception.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So you had those arguments. How about the 2s? Give it 2. Why did you give it 2?
I don't believe he can change.
It's just empty promises being there.
Thank you, Ellie. See what I have to work with? This is my colleague.
I'm being honest.
That's pretty. Yeah.
We'll see.
So look
That's
and
my
see.
stand.
Yeah.
My stand is we'll see.
We will see. So this is like the carrot and the stick, right?
Yeah.
The stick here.
Yeah.
Big one.
Big one. Anyone else as a 2? Yeah. Why a 2?
Okay, for this scenario, Anwar should overcome his own problem and then not affected the colleagues because of his problem, and then may bring the negative side or these good things to other colleagues.
Yeah. So basically, it's really, and this is something that we see a lot of, and you'll see a lot more of, is that the younger generation is now 60% of the employment, right? Is Gen Ys. These are people who are under 30, 35. They have a perception of themselves that's really not generally, I should say, perception of everyone, right? They're very much social media based. So they have this concept of themselves that's actually not very social and not very aware of their environment. Right? And therefore, we'll get more and more of this over time because more and more of these young people are joining. And so there's a whole education that you, the older generation, have to bring to them, unless you're Gen Y, which is basically an awareness. Right? You have to make them aware that, yes, you're still productive, but there are rules and regulations, right? Otherwise, it looks like we are treating Anwar differently than everyone else. Anwar is privileged. Anwar has shown favoritism. And maybe the boss is overreacting, but there's some justification. There's some justification for that, yeah. And that's something that, how do you get the discipline in place? Yes, there are some flexi hours within span, but they have to be respected and not fully taken advantage of, even though they're highly productive. And we're going to see this more and more because this generation tends to work at very odd hours. They're very quick, they're very good at what they do, but they don't really fit the norm of what we would consider to be normal working hours or normal working behaviors. And so you're going to have to manage that more and more as time comes on. So that, yes, it's fine that you are performing, but there are also rules. We have to sit in those rules. So maybe the boss is overreacting a little bit too much, but you can also understand the boss's side. So you see this, there's two different, same scenario, two different perspectives from two different people. And just because you see it one way doesn't mean it's the right way. There's also a conflict there. And so you have to think about it not as a fight, but as what is your perspective? And so therefore, what we want to first talk about is conflict should not be avoided. Right? You need to talk about it, particularly if you are in a situation of having to advise or have a younger person under you. And so essentially, what we need to talk about is how do we understand conflict? How do we manage conflict? And basically, the idea is that conflict exists everywhere, all the time. If you don't have conflict, we're not moving forward. We're not learning. We learn from conflict. So therefore, conflict is not a bad thing. Being nice to everyone all the time is not helpful. We need to see and understand and resolve it. That's the key. It's not to avoid it, but how to resolve it. And there's an old model, this has been around for over 50 years now, called the Thomas and Kuhlman. Basically, they're saying there are 5 different ways of approaching conflict. There's the avoidance, there's a collaboration, there's a compromise, there's a competition, and there's what's called accommodation. And each one of these has a different purpose. So let's look at those. Basically, it really depends on how you resolve your conflict, how you approach your conflict, on how important is a resolution. For example, with Anwar, it didn't have to happen today. It's something that builds over time. So the assertiveness or the urgency is not very high in this case. You need to basically, how do I get this resolved? This is things that I need. I am Anwar's boss. I need to make sure that Anwar understands the rules and regulations and follows them. So, is that low or is that high? How important is it? And ultimately, in this conversation, the boss has had enough. I'm tired of Anwar not doing what he's supposed to be doing, and I need to talk about it. But it's not a matter of life or death, or it's not a matter of urgency. It's a slow burn, a slow build-up. So that's the first one, assertiveness. And the second one is cooperativeness, which basically talks about how important is the relationship between the two people. If that relationship is not important, then you're not worried about it. If it is important, then you have to handle it in a certain way. So basically, if the relationship is important, and the urgency is fairly high, then basically what you want to be doing is you want to be collaborating. You want to find the win-win. You collaborate. What is the best thing we can do? And usually with Anwar, it doesn't result in Anwar saying, oh, I'm leaving because I want to have my own free time. He actually comes and collaborates with the boss, trying to figure out a solution that's reasonable. Like working hours, work longer hours. That's a collaboration. Working out together, finding a common solution that both parties are happy with. That's great, but it's not always what's going to happen. If you can get there, fantastic, but the harder the conflict, the less likely you're going to end up with collaboration, particularly if these two people don't cooperate. If you already have a conflict with them, it's not easy. Another way of looking at it is to say, I don't really care about our long-term relationship, but this is important for me to get done, so therefore I'm going to tell you what to do. You could have gone into that conversation, pointed at Anwar and said, you just do what you're supposed to do. You show up on time and you leave on time. That's an acceptable alternative. It doesn't help Anwar in the sense that, why are you yelling at me, boss? I'm being highly productive. So it kills the motivation in Anwar. But there are circumstances where competing is I win, you lose. Rare, but it does happen. Why? Because it destroys the cooperation, it destroys the relationship between you and that individual. You don't trust them. If they come at you and say, you must do what I tell you to do, no matter what you think. It's not great. Right? Another one down here is one that's called avoidance. So if you don't really care about the relationship, and if it's not important, what do? You avoid it. You walk away. Right? So you ever have a boss who sees you coming, they turn around and leave? They pretend they're not there. They don't answer their phone. You know? What are they doing? They're avoiding. Why are they avoiding? Because they don't want to have conflict. Avoidance is not very helpful because you don't get anything resolved. And if you're somebody who thinks that you can break the conflict by not addressing it, it's only going to fester. It only gets worse. So avoidance is a short-term strategy. It rarely works long-term. And if you are a person who likes avoiding conflict, you will become known in that in the organization. So this person, they don't like reality. They don't want to face reality. And it's in many cases, it's a career limiting approach. Another one is accommodating. I accommodate my wife all the time. It's something that's important to her. It's not important to me. You want to do it, you go ahead and do it. But that makes her even more upset. But that's okay. It's not important to me. It's important to you. Okay, go ahead. Right. So that's accommodating. I fly the white flag. Yeah, I surrender. It's okay. Right? It's not important to me. It's important to you. Okay. And that will happen. That will happen. And that will happen at work too. And then the last one, the one that's halfway to nowhere, is the famous one in the middle, compromising. You compromise is I take a little, you take a little. Compromise is not always what you're aiming for. It's not a good place to be, always. Because it basically means you're halfway to nowhere. Compromising. You give a little, you give a little. What's important is that what you give is something that they need, and what they give is something that you need. So don't just look for, oh, we're going to cut it in half. Half of what? So collaboration, yes, absolutely, but not always. Competing, rarely, but sometimes it's necessary. Avoiding, don't avoid. Accommodating, yeah, absolutely. If it's not important to you, but important to them, go. Let them do it. If they want to try something, and you think they're going to fail, don't tell them they're going to fail. Allow them to fail. Let them do what they want to do. They'll learn. It's very important for Gen Ys that basically sometimes they see things that they really want to try. You do not understand what they're trying to do. Okay, just do it. As long as it doesn't hurt your organization or take up an enormous amount of time. And then last but not least, compromising is sort of like a victory of no victory. It's almost it. Now, each of us has our preferred style. Each of us has our preferred style. What's important to say is that if you are a person who always wants to collaborate, it doesn't always work. You don't always have the time. There might be the conflict is big enough that you cannot find collaboration. That's okay. Be comfortable with all five. Be comfortable with all five of these. And sometimes you have to compete. Sometimes you have to come in there and say, this is it, this is what it is. You know, I'm going to resign my job if I don't get this. That's a competition. So the boss, as well as the employee, can have that relationship. Okay, any other questions on accommodating and all this? In your handout, you have more details on each one. And as I say, important thing to remember, each one of us has a preferred style. But try and work with all five styles. Don't only just do one. Because that's not always the thing that you want to do. Or it's not always possible to do. There's collaboration, there's compromise, there's cutting the bill in half, there's competition, and then there's hardly accommodation. Okay? So use those, be aware of them, and then use whichever one fits the requirement. And normally, in Anwar, this is someone who basically wants to collaborate, who wants to be positive, saying, yeah, okay, I give it to you, but you must do this and this. Right? So this is collaboration. This is more almost in the area of competition, right? If you don't do this, if you don't do this, like our mothers say, if you don't do this, or the fact is my wife, if you don't do this, The idea, did any of you clarify the disagreement? Did you find where you disagreed quickly? How did that happen, right? The boss is the first one to talk. You're a bad boy? Is that what you started with? You're in trouble. Oh, right? So you start immediately by accusing him. And then immediately he comes back and says, whoa, wait. Oh, what are you talking about? Those who played Anwar, was it a surprise that your boss talked about this? Because in this scenario, it's not in there. You think everything is great. Life is cool. I have a car. Right? I am so much more productive. Oh, life is great. But actually, in fact, it's not. Yeah. So clarify the disagreement. Make sure, therefore, you have a common goal. If we were to collaborate, how could we collaborate? And then discuss the ways to meet it. So really what you're talking about is you're not agreeing to disagree like these two guys. You basically are trying to figure out what can we accommodate? How can we make this happen? How can we win? Determine the barriers, agree to the best way forward, and acknowledge the agreed upon solution. Very important. Go back into it and say, okay, this is what we agreed upon, right? You agree with that. Make sure they understand. Because they have a different perspective. So they hear things differently. They hear things differently. Okay? So that brings us down to negotiation, because conflict is a negotiation. So what is about negotiation? You can go to 2-day, 3-day training programs, 4-day training programs of negotiation. Negotiations comes down to really 2 of the 3 things. The first thing about negotiation that you need to know about is BATNA. BATNA stands for Best Alternative to Negotiated Agreement. You can call it also a Plan B. And Plan A is what you want. Plan B is that if I don't get A, I at least have B. The best negotiators in the world always have a BATNA. They don't work on Plan A. They make sure they have Plan B. So they spend most of their time making sure that Plan B will work. Why is that? It's because if A doesn't work out, I have B. And B is good enough for me. So I feel much freer in pursuing A aggressively. Because if I don't get it, I have B. So the great negotiators don't look at Plan A, they look at Plan B. And then they go for A. So they go up, right? So always have this idea of what happens if we don't agree? What am I going to do? Am I going to leave? Am I going to, I don't know, what you can do? Right? If you're unarmed, what would be your Plan B? That's the key. So have a Plan B, always. So when you go into your negotiations, always have what happens if this doesn't happen. That's really the biggest thing in negotiations is this. And then it's basically how far do you want to go? If your Plan B is here, how far down do you want to go? What's called the reserve price? What are you willing to give up? What is the smallest price you're willing to sell your good at? Or what is the highest price you're willing to buy? Have an idea about that. What's the size of the scale? Zoba is exactly the same thing as this. It's a different way of talking about it. So it's basically where can you overlap. And last but not least, I think this is an important one, particularly at work, is this idea that your boss is already in a strength, and if you're the boss, you're already in a strength of power and authority. So when you go into your performance management reviews, the boss already has a leg up, right? Because they have power, they have authority. But you have stuff too. You have knowledge and information, and you have also time pressure. Have you always had people who delay answering things, always very last minute? It's not because they're lazy, most often. It's because basically it's a way of negotiating. When you run out of time, your ability to negotiate is smaller and smaller and smaller. So holding back, and as the deadline approaches, the boss becomes more desperate and is willing to give up more. So that's one strategy. The other one is information knowledge. You hold back information until the your knowledge, right? So like Anwar knows he's more productive, but he hasn't told anyone. He just knows it. Right? That's information, that's knowledge. So these are always in conflict with each other. And obviously, the authority, you can counterbalance it with information and pressure. But another way of looking at it is that you can collaborate better. If you as a boss are using your authority, then you can expect that your subordinates are going to use knowledge and pressure, time, against you. But if you are working together, and that this strength and authority is, yeah, it's there, but it's not used, then your colleagues and your subordinates are not going to use these. They're going to balance. And the information tends to start being shared, and things start getting done quickly when you stop using the me or the highway approach, the competition. I am right, you are wrong. It only lasts so long. and then all of a sudden, oh, there's no more information. Or, oh, all of a sudden everything is very late. We do this instinctively. We don't do it on purpose most of the time. We're constantly trying to figure out how to use what we have. The other thing about negotiation that's very useful is that the preparation for the negotiation. That's why we ask you to fill out the sheets as the boss and as the employee. And you should try to do that in front of any important meeting. Get prepared. Be ready for the discussion. Be ready for the arguments. You do that in law. You prepare yourself for the court case. You prepare yourself for negotiation. So the preparation, I say, is really the number one. And then opening and getting started is basically how do you set it up. Now you have a very nice way of opening in Malaysia. It's always, have you had your lunch? How's your day today? A very nice way of approaching things. But that's not the issue. The issue is how you're going to start establishing what are we going to talk about. Why is this important? That's the key, right? And once you get that, then you can negotiate the right thing. I can't tell you the amount of times people start negotiating about something and they're two completely different arguments. So what are we arguing about? Have you ever had that happen? Why are we arguing? Right? We're agreeing to disagree, or we're agreeing to agree. Why are we arguing? Why are we negotiating? It's because we haven't set up the opening properly. And once you've done with the negotiation, then you absolutely have to verify that you agree on what you're going to do. That's very important. Because all the hard work has been done, and if you can't come to a closure, nothing's happening. You start all over again. So these are 4 steps. Preparation, agreeing on what you're going to talk about, talking about it, negotiating, discussing it, and then coming to an agreement and a closure. That's why we ask you each time, what is your rating and why? In our debriefs, you always want to see you hear the why. Okay? So preparation, understand your back and reserve price, what are you ready to do, the opening, right? What do you want to talk about? There's also this idea of a red blue. The red is the one who's basically always pushing. This is the one who's in competition. Manipulative, aggressive, intimidating, exploitative. These are the super A types, not just characters. But we also have the other side, which is the blue type, which is a win-win cooperation, trust, willing, be people-oriented. This is result-oriented, this is people-oriented. And what we're saying is that neither of them is good. Somewhere in between, you have to have this balance between the relationship and the result. So I get some of what I want, you get some of what I want. It's not always compromise. It's this idea of there's a relationship and there are results. Relationship results. How do we resolve them? Constant battle. All right, then closure. Basically make sure that there's agreement and understanding what that agreement is. You play Anwar becomes the boss and the observer becomes John. Right? And you use the sheets the same way. So whoever's boss now uses the boss sheet. Whoever's Anwar becomes John uses John's sheet. Done?
Yeah.
All right. Here we go. The famous quiz. How many teams gave John a 1? Oh, you're all very nice. The big boss told you to give him a 1. So you get some big boss. How about 2? Anyone for 2? 2. 3. 4. A, B, C, D. Okay. 4 of them. 4. Okay. Sorry. And then 3s. 3. 3. Okay. Any 4s? Anyone's 4? No 4s? All right, let's look at the 3s first. Why are 3? That's what I meant. All right, fine. Why are 3?
Yes. Okay. The scenario said that me as a boss don't have I only receive information or report from the previous manager, which I don't have the details on what is really happening.
Right.
So
Right.
that is why initially I want to give the low rating for the employee,
Right.
for John, but after discussion with him and considering that the reason that he gave to me, and also by considering that I don't have the details,
Details, yeah.
just in order for me to finalize it, so I just compromise on that and give 3 to him.
Right. Because he had a 4 before, right?
Yeah.
So John, you're still not 100% happy. Were you happy with that? You're okay. Have
There is no complaint
Yeah.
regarding the previous complaint.
Right.
And it just they say.
You know that there were issues, right? Because in the past, nothing had been perfect. But how big were those issues? They weren't treated seriously before. Why would they be treated seriously now?
Yeah, still persistent. The problem is that.
Yeah. Okay. How about the other 3s? Why a 3? Why a 3? Why 3? It's his fault. He's not here, so we can't say. Why was it 3? Boss. Which one of you was the boss? Okay, how's that? Who's the boss?
I got.
Oh, okay. Why did you give him a 3?
Since actually he's a good worker.
Yeah.
Good worker. And he's also a senior worker. And have a very good previous.
Yeah. So this doesn't happen in the vacuum, right? So there has to be some reason for this, right? Okay, fair enough.
Even though I have a file
Right.
saying that John is slacking, on his documentations and all that, but it seems that he can still be improved in a way that if I say give him a chance, then maybe he can improve.
Okay. So basically, you're right. John's been there a long time. He knows what he's doing. Yes, he makes mistakes, but what's the type of mistake he makes? Is it big? Is it small? What are we looking at? You're absolutely right. Right now, we don't know. We haven't had time to go through the file. If anything, we planned this meeting too soon. We didn't prepare for this meeting well enough. The boss rushes because he's been told to rush, and he arrives and it's a completely different situation than what he had imagined. So you need more time. And this is a good way of buying time, is to say, temporarily, let's hold it here. It could go back up to 4, but we don't know yet. So it's a holding pattern. Okay? How about the other 3? Any other explanation for it? I'm going to be. It's somewhere between a 2 and a 3, it's okay. Okay, how about the 2s? Why a 2? Why 2? Don't tell me it's LD again. But multiple. There's a pattern, possibly. Yeah. And how did you, who was John? You were John? So how did you take that?
No, I was
Oh, John. Oh my God, you were John. How did you get that across to her?
I was a nice John.
Oh, you were nice?
Yeah.
So you played it nice, Ellie? How out of character that is.
No, I realized.
Okay. Fair. And how about the other Johns? The 2s? The other ones who played John, how did you look if you got a 2? Were you happy? Not happy? Demoralized, yeah? Yeah. It's like, what are you talking about, yeah? But did you understand the boss's point of view, or you just like, nah, I'm not happy? Not happy. Yeah, it's tough. But that's why you need as a boss to be more flexible, right? To basically say, I assume a lot. John's boss assumes a lot in this role. He's been told from the big boss. You know how that is, right? The big boss expects and assumes something's happening down here because he's heard things. So therefore, go down there and kick John. So you just been promoted. What do? You go and you kick John. That's not very useful. Right? That's not very useful. If anything, it's basically how do you, as John's boss, pull back a little bit. Yeah. No one went for a 1. No one went for a 1. No one followed the big boss, which is good. But no one allowed John to stay where he was, which is a 4. So you did get somewhere with it. But as you say, do you have John's confidence or not? How can you use the relationship with John to start building towards, John, show me what I need to know. Help me and I'll help you. How can we build something, collaborate? Because we certainly are starting off on the wrong foot, right? We're starting off on a very adversarial, competition, conflict with John. This is not a good meeting. This is not an easy meeting. And John has information, right? So John has power. You have power because you have authority. But John has information and knowledge. And you cannot overlook that. You overlook it at your own peril. Because you might lose John. John might be so demotivated. How would you Joe Washington or someone like that, right? You're going to go sit elsewhere. Use my talents elsewhere. Yeah. Any other comments on John? On this one role play? A little harder than the last one.
I just want to make an observation. John was obviously shocked when the boss raised the issue because she didn't expect that.
Exactly.
That is the conversation about.
Exactly.
So, yeah, can really tell this the shocking part. I think our group didn't come to a conclusion whether to give which rating because the boss feel that we still need to give him some time to prove himself.
Yeah. So it's too soon. Yeah, that's perfectly acceptable too. It's too soon. You don't need to give a rating right now. It's not the end of the year, right? But you're absolutely right. In that shock, have you felt that before in a meeting? What? And you have to see that from the boss's point of view, yeah, they might be right, but that doesn't mean that it's the correct approach. Just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. You know what I mean? It's not the correct thing to do. Yeah.
The John scenario, there seems to be a complaint towards John. Shouldn't the superior brought up to John when they received the complaint for him to explain rather than communicate itself until wait to the performance review?
Yeah. And particularly since the old boss was always protecting John, right? Oh, don't worry about the complaint, you're doing a good job. You're my best worker, right? So therefore the complaints were never, I should say, taken seriously. So if you don't take something seriously, then how can we be disciplined? How can we be accountable? And these are basic job, right? Those are accountable, honesty, and discipline. So it's important that we follow through on these things, and that when they happen, we address them. And we don't say, don't worry, because we have rules to follow. You are the regulator. You are the one who established the rules. So it's very important that you do keep that in mind, and that discipline is an issue. But yeah, absolutely. When it happens, you have to address it. And not as John's boss was doing, which was either being accommodating, so he doesn't care, or basically being avoiding. I'll hide it. So John's ex-boss is really not what SPAN should be about at all. At all. It was all the wrong behaviors. But those behaviors exist, right? Those behaviors exist in your organization today. People hide things. People are not honest about things. People say, don't worry about it, it's not a big deal, it's only a customer. Those things are actually hurting you as an organization. Not only as an individual, but as an organization. You can't move forward unless you have everyone believing in moving forward in the same direction. So, yeah, John's boss is important that he comes in, the new boss, and sets some sort of a pattern up. That, yes, you may have been up here, but really your behavior is down here. You need to adjust. Right? One of the old conditions, anything was allowed because no one was counting. No one was measuring anything. Do what you need to do. Wait, what does that mean? You're a regulator. You can't do whatever you need to do. You need to work within the parameters of what you're doing. That's the key. Create opportunities that come out. Yeah. Any other points of reference or questions on John? Do we want to take a quick break? We need a break? Or do you want to go through? Okay, let's start again. The others will try. So, up to now we've done 2 role plays, right? Have your role plays always started with the boss starting? Yes. Never with the other, right? And in this last one with John, did the boss start with, my boss told me to tell you this? Or anything like that? Yeah? But I've been told, right? I've been told. Those are some of the key elements of what we're going to talk about now. This is probably the most important part of the day. This is something that you can use not only in your own job, but also anything that you do. Your kids, your husband, your relatives, your friends. These are really the tools that work best in these circumstances. And the first thing you want to talk about is you always want to use the I approach. I understand, I see, I feel, I. Not you. Never put words in the other person's mouth. And don't use third party. So if anyone starts off by saying, my boss told me to tell you this, that's third party. Right? That's a third person. That's not in the room. Or colleagues of yours have told me this. When you hear that, the first thing in your mind that goes is that, which colleague? Where? Why? Right? And your mind immediately goes in that direction and you don't listen anymore to what that person is saying. So if you bring in a conversation where you say, somebody said this, and you're not saying who that person is, even if you couldn't say the name of the person you're telling that to switches off immediately and starts thinking about, why would they say that? How would they say that? Which way? And they're not listening. So if you want to turn someone off, just use the third person. Your colleagues don't like you. You want them to shut down? Shut them down. That's very fast. That's the fastest way. What happens is when we are what's called aggressed or attacked like that, there is a hormone in our body called cortisol. Cortisol is a very special hormone. It's important that you have it because basically it makes you say, focused. It helps you to develop ideas, etc. It's important to have. But too much of it, you stress out completely and you shut down. Your brain actually stops functioning under cortisol. And you go into what's called the fight and flight mode. You want to run away. So when somebody sits down and says, your colleagues don't like you, the first thing you want to do is get up and run away. Or you want to hit them. Either way, fight or flight. Yeah? And that's not helpful, because in conversations, discussions, and conflicts, you need the other person you're talking to think. You have to be able to think. And so therefore, the only way that you can help yourself or help that other person to think is always use the word I. I see it this way. It's from my perspective. I feel this way, etc. Not you feel this way, or other people say you feel this way, or the boss says that you do this. It's I. Use it from the I. The I is not offensive. The I can talk to. So you always use I. Avoid using you, and particularly putting ideas or feelings in the other person. You must be feeling this, right? No. Your initial reaction is always no. What do you know about me? How do you know how I feel? And all you're doing is you're getting the cortisol level right up. You want a shot of cortisol? Tell them, I think you're feeling this way, right? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Yeah. So never assume when they're thinking or needing, and you don't use the word others. This is something that you can do. It's not always necessary, but it's down here. First, seek to understand, then be understood. So, when you want to start a conversation, particularly your performance management review, you always want to start off with a question. A question starts a conversation. Because if you are talking, you're not hearing anything from the other person. The other person is listening to you, but that's all you know. Only when the other person is talking, you actually get information. You actually develop ideas. How do you get information from the other person? Ask them questions. So even though you might be in the same room as your boss, and your boss starts off the conversation, ask them a question. As they start answering the questions, you start understanding more. You're getting more information. You're building up your power base, right? The power of questions is very, very true. And in conversations, those who are speaking cannot listen, and therefore they cannot learn. Those who are listening can learn. So asking questions is the most powerful thing you can do, particularly if you're in the boss's position. Because only when you understand what John is thinking, only when you understand what Anwar's issues are and his perspective, can you actually come to a good compromise or a good conclusion. And essentially, there are many, many ways of asking questions. And this is the basis of coaching. And you can get certified in coaching and all this good stuff. But fundamentally, there is this model called the GROW model. And the GROW model of coaching is by far the most used now. And it's used because it's simple and it's very effective. The GROW model actually asks 4 types of questions. The G of GROW stands for goals. And when you ask this type of question, you're looking for what is the objective that this person has in mind. What does Anwar want to do? What does John want to do? What is their long-term perspective? What is their aim? Understand where they want to go. So it's things like, what do you want to achieve now and in the future? What benefits will you get from that? What will happen if you don't succeed? What will happen if you try this? So asking about the future is the first piece. The second one is that, okay, now that we've asked about the future, what is the reality today? Where are we today? What is currently happening? In John's case, you could have asked about, John, are you able, or are you thinking of, that's actually not the right way. Going the wrong direction. See, I need to prepare better. It's basically talking about, okay, John, how are things going with regard to customer complaints? What's your objective in terms of handling these? That's one way of getting John to talk about, is he even having that as a goal? Does he have that in his mind? Is he thinking about it? And then, what are you doing today about it? Right? What have you done so far? How far away are you? Maybe John is very worried about what's happening with his customers. You don't know that. All you know is that they're making complaints. So get his perspective, his targets, his reality, how he sees it. And then the options. Once you know the goals and the reality, you can go into the options. What are the different solutions that we can explore that will allow us to diminish the number of complaints from customers? What are the things that we can do? 2 or 3 different ideas. So once you have different ideas, now you can get creative. Now you can start thinking about benchmarking, things like this. And the last one, the W, is basically, now that we've talked about the goals, now that we've talked about how far we are from our goals, and what are the different options that we have to get there, do we have the willpower? Do we have the motivation to get it done? The will to get it done, right? So, are you willing to take this first step? What is a timeline that you're willing to commit to? What will the first step be? How are we going to resolve these problems? Okay, what's the first step to resolving it? What are we going to do first? What could be the KPI, if you wish, of this? Yeah? And how will you know when you reach your goal? What will you do? So these are the types of questions that you constantly want to be coming to the front and asking. And if you're an employee, you can ask it of the boss. If you're a boss, you certainly need to keep asking it of your employee. That's the most important, right? Now, there are different types of questions that you can ask. There's what's called the open-ended question. Open-ended question is that you cannot answer with a yes or a no. And you want to ask as many open-ended questions as you can, because a yes and no conversation is very quick. Yes, no, no, yes. You're not getting anywhere, you're just getting a yes or a no. But an open-ended question is basically allowing you to get facts, to understand their perspective, understand how they're feeling and their emotions, to basically provoke thought. You're trying to get their brain, which is the front part of our brain called the prefrontal cortex. That's our thinking part. And when you ask an open-ended question, you're engaging the prefrontal cortex. But there's also room for closed questions. Closed are a yes or no answer, and they basically are just confirmed facts. They're also to clear up confusion. Is this the way it's going to happen? Yes or no? Right? Are you committing to this date? Do we understand each other on this? And then suggestive and non-suggestive, although really open and closed is the first place to start. Start with open-ended questions. And really, your conversation should be about 80% in the open-ended versus about only 20% in the yes or no. Because an open-ended question starts a conversation. You can talk to each other. You can build ideas. Closed-ended is just confirmation of what's already been discussed at the end of the conversation. Okay? So a non-suggestive question is basically a question that says, am I right here? Oh, sorry. Would this solution work for you, right? So it's suggesting to them if there is something that they can see or could do. A suggestive question in terms of openness, why would this solution work for you? But for the moment, I would say just work on the open and closed questions in the next round. All right? And the next round is our final round called Farhana. So whatever role you have not played yet, that's the role you will play. Okay, so if you've been the boss, you've been the employee, you're now your turn. How are you doing? Done? Alright, I'm Farhana. How many of you gave her a what? A How about a 2? 1, 2. How about a 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 3. 3, 3. How about a 4? Okay, Farhana, wait, the boss. You're the boss? No, I'm not the boss, I'm not the boss. Who is the observer? Let's put it that way. You're the observer, so you're the boss. I don't know what he wants to be. Who's Farhana talking to? It's both of them. And you both give her a 4.
I give a 4 and 3.
Okay, but you still got a 4. You're the guy who gave her a 4. Why did you give her a 4?
Because
Yeah.
she said that the mistake that our organization she actually improved and
Okay. And you bought that argument? You don't have it in your frame, right? She must be right. It must be in her script. Oh, Farhana, you are a devious character. Oh, fair enough. So she used information against you. Yeah. Took your authority away from you. Very good. Well, that was devious, but very successful. Okay. It proves that persuasion is a very good way. What? Yeah. I didn't do that. All right. How about some of the 2s? Why 2? 2? Why 2? Were you 2?
Yeah.
Were you the boss?
She just needs to improve.
Just need to improve.
Yeah, I mean she accepts the fact that she has declined, her performance has declined for the past 3 months. Thing is, she didn't know why, although I have told her why, and she finds me a bit obnoxious.
Oh.
Simply because I took her aside and, let her go by line by line.
Did any other Farhanas find the boss obnoxious?
Come on, speak up. Come on.
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Interesting, huh? Was it the boss that was micromanaging?
Yes.
As Farhana, you feel that?
Yes.
Especially as the boss starts asking questions. Did the boss, now here we go. Those who played the bosses, did you ask questions?
Yes.
And the answers are really, the questions are really annoying. They're even worse than statements. Yeah. Why did you do this? What?
But
That's a
the Farhana was being defensive.
For sure. Why wouldn't she be?
Why should she be?
Because
It's a job.
No. There's a job and then there's a job. Right. Within the job, there are elements of, is the boss overreacting? Was there a legitimate reason for having the change of protocols and it was all mixed up and not properly communicated? So it's out of Farhana's control. So was she being improperly blamed for something that she really didn't have proper control over? Now, as the boss, you could also argue, wait a minute, Farhana, you're taking things way too personally. And the credibility of SPAN is important to maintain the discipline, right? And the accountability is important to us as a whole. So it's not just you, it's all of us are in this boat, right? We're in this together. So consequently, don't get too sensitive, the boss could say. But on the other hand, Farhana also has something to say, let me do my job. Stop babysitting me. I don't like micromanaging.
But you're doing it wrong.
This is Farhana's boss here. You have to come out of character. Come back to reality.
Oh, okay, it's already 4:30, okay.
So it's a tough one, but these are the situations. Did it help if Farhana's boss asked you questions as opposed to accusing? Did you find it? No? Or did Farhana still accuse? Farhana's boss still accuse? Did you ask questions? Did you try? This is blank expression. Asking questions, if you're Farhana's boss, you would have understood by asking questions that she's not happy. She's not happy because of the way, the behavior of the boss, above all else. The behavior of the boss is something that's an issue. How many of you discussed the behavior of the boss? No, you never got there, right? And it's still because the boss comes at Farhana in a direct hit, right?
Yeah, how dare her? Gotten 0.
But still, we're here to basically try to figure out how can we find a win-win. Not just shoot him down. And shooting down is so easy to do, but it doesn't help build. How many of the Farhanas were ready to quit? How many of you? Any of you? Did any of you feel that way as Farhana? Who played Farhana?
No, it's still on.
I think I feel a bit of helpless because I didn't know what I was done wrong, and this accusation was thrown at me. I'm like, then when? I mean,
Why?
the boss
Why?
keeps saying that, I've been telling you, I already told you this. I'm like, what was wrong? I did it according to what you told me, and why you accusing me again? So it's like helplessness, like don't know where to actually identify what are the things that I done wrong.
And very often, Farhana, in this case, the people playing Farhana say, oh, it's fine. You give me a 2, I'm going. Because I have my pride, I have my word. I think that you are being unfair, and I'm being treated unfairly. And that's actually a legitimate feeling. But the boss is in a tough spot now because the boss thinks that she's right, or he's right. It's like, this is it. I'm right and you're wrong. But in fact, really, it's a two-way. Both have to step back. Farhana has to get less sensitive, and more importantly, the boss has to get less micromanagement, less about this, perception. But at the same time, you are spanned, and therefore you have to have discipline. And to a certain extent, the boss is right in that regard.
The boss is being petty.
Petty. I agree. Next. No, you're right. It's pettiness, right? It's the small stuff. Micromanaging. And as a consequence of that, when we micromanage, we don't understand what we're really doing.
Bosses should be thinking about something
Bigger, right? Yeah. Micromanaging boss usually is a sign of a boss who's nervous, who's not comfortable in the job that they're in.
Maturity complex.
So basically it is when you're in this situation where you have a boss that's micromanaging, don't get upset. Try to figure out how you can help them become more comfortable and breathe. Right? Be calm. Be one with nature, as opposed to because what happens is that when people don't become insecure, they start closing down. And when they close down, they start micromanaging. So a boss that micromanages is someone who's not happy, they're not comfortable doing what they're doing. And that's usually a sign, I need help. And so as an employee, try to find a way of helping them.
So have no boss. So please always have your boss.
Help the boss. And they will help you. Right? Ultimately.
Oh, you can replace them. That's always the issue.
Yeah, but it's always, this conversation becomes easier between Farhana and her boss if there are questions asked. How do you feel? What are you seeing? How are things coming? How could you have done this better? How could we have worked it better together? Is there anything I could have done to help you? These types of questions are basically elements that would allow the discussion to progress, and you can understand where Farhana is coming from. And how she might be able to then reveal to the boss that, boss, I need your help, but not the way you're giving it to me. That's important. And the only way to get that type of answer is to ask questions. And each time we do this role play, if we don't ask questions, Farhana is ready to leave. I've been accused of something I did not commit. That's out of my control, and that I did not do it the way she sees it. So therefore, I'm out of here. So it's a very, very delicate balance. And the way around it, the way to it, I should say, is some questions. Open-ended questions. How are you feeling today? So she can't answer yes or no. And then basically opens up. How do you see the situation happening? Tell me through your eyes what happened. Those are very important. If you're able to do that as a boss, or even as an employee, boss, how do we look at this now? Right? What do you see? How do you see it? Those are very, very important questions. And as an employee, you can ask as much as the boss. Don't ask a question with a question, or again, don't answer a question with a question. That just sets up this bizarre, I say, you say, I'll imitate you. But actually, try to get into understanding their perspective, because their perspective is different than your perspective. Together, if you understand each other better, the relationship is better, and more importantly, the results are better. So it's better for Span, it's better for you, it's better for yourselves. That's really the key elements of negotiation, conflict management. It will always exist. What you do with it, how you handle it, is the most important. And everyone is different. Everyone is different. You yourself are different with different people. Absolutely. Absolutely. Depends on how comfortable you are with them. Depends on your relationship. How much you know them, how much you trust them. Okay? So that's all I had. I have some aspects on body language. But basically what's amazing is that a tremendous amount of our communication is nonverbal. It's through what we see in our body language. And our body language always tells us what we're thinking. And even though we're not trained in this, we know instinctively somebody's upset or somebody is, curious, or it's like fighting his boss, or it's somewhere or another, right? You can tell. And so therefore, consequently, use your ability to read others. And relations, by and large, are very good at body language, understanding body language. You always are concerned about each other. And you read that through the body, not through what you say. Words themselves are about 10% of a conversation, 80 to 90% of body language. So be aware of that. Sit up straight. Right? Yeah, things like this. So that was really the last piece that I had. Any questions that you have about anything today? Has this been helpful for you?
I think one of the things that we didn't really dwell into our role play is the partner.
Is that?
Partner. Like what, when we do the
barter?
Yeah, the partner. The
partner.
Yeah, because we were not told in the script that what will be our bottom line that we cannot compromise. So
and that's one of the things that you can write into
in the form itself.
Yeah, into the form itself. Yeah. So what would be your, so in Farhana's case, very often the back is I leave. I got better things to do with my life than be around this boss. But that's ultimately a lose-lose, right? She loses, the company loses. It's not really the best alternative, but it's a bad thing. But you're right. You should be building in the bad things. What will happen if? Those are scenarios. What happens if? If I say this, what will happen? But thanks for that. Any other comments? So you understand behavior, KPIs. KPIs have been happening now. You should have your KPIs by end of month. By the end of this month. And basically that will allow you to implement them as of July. Right? July will be a correction. So you have half a year to practice KPIs and behaviors. Half a year. From July through December of 2020. And then hopefully in 2021, you have the full cycle. Only at the end of 2021 should you have to pay for performance. And that's the earliest possible. That's our advice to you. Okay, good luck. You've been a good team. Thank you very much for your support. Thank you.